Thank you.
Jesus.
This list isn't the usual algorithmic slop. I've spent the better part of this week digging through the digital basement of Prime Video, filtering out the low-budget landfill to find the narratives that actually carry some weight. These 12 thrillers from 2025 managed to dodge the massive marketing machines, but they possess a craftsmanship that's becoming rare in the streaming age. If you're tired of the same 3 predictable plot beats, these are the ones I've personally vetted for your time tonight. Number 1. Drop, 2025. The visual texture here is deceptive. It starts with the warm, inviting amber glow of a high-end restaurant, the kind of place where people go to feel safe and seen. But as the night wears on, director Christopher Landon shifts the palette towards something far more clinical and predatory. You can practically feel the cold sweat on the screen as the modern convenience of a smartphone is weaponized into a tracking device. It's a claustrophobic exercise in tension that relies on the unseen rather than the obvious. The production of this film is where things get interesting. Shot during a period when the industry was reeling from tech disruptions, Landon chose to lean into the very tech that was causing the chaos. The crew spent weeks perfecting the drop interface, ensuring that the timing of the digital pings felt like a heartbeat. There was a legendary level of secrecy on set. The cast members were often given scripts with missing pages to ensure that their reactions to the anonymous threats felt visceral and unscripted. It was a lean, mean production cycle designed to mimic the rapid-fire pacing of a viral event. Landon, known for his ability to blend genre tropes, fought for a more grounded, serious tone here, moving away from the playfulness of his previous work to capture a specific type of modern paranoia that feels uncomfortably close to home. If you're the type of person who checks their phone every 30 seconds, this is going to be a profoundly uncomfortable experience. It's a high-stress watch that demands you put your own devices in the other room. While we're discussing people trapped in high-stakes environments, the next film takes that feeling of being watched and moves it from a restaurant to the dusty, surreal outskirts of Buenos Aires. Number 2. Kill the Jockey, Jockey, 2025. This film doesn't just look like a movie, it looks like a fever dream, curated by someone with a deep love for 70s European art house. The colors are saturated, the shadows are deep, and there's an oily, tactile quality to the scenes involving the racing world. It's a film about the physical toll of a profession, and every frame communicates the grime and the glory of the turf, with a surrealist edge that keeps the viewer perpetually off balance. Director Luis Ortega is a man who doesn't believe in doing things the easy way. During the production of Kill the Jockey, he insisted on filming in actual, high-intensity racing environments, often putting his lead actor, Nahuel Perez Biscayart, in genuinely precarious positions to capture the raw physicality of the sport. The production design was a massive undertaking, creating a world that feels both hyper-real and completely disconnected from time. There are stories from the set about Ortega rewriting scenes on the fly to follow the natural, unpredictable behavior of the horses, leading to a filming schedule that was as chaotic as the protagonist's life. The chemistry between Biscayart and Ursula Corberó wasn't just manufactured. They spent months embedded in the Argentinian racing culture to understand the specific brand of desperation that drives people in that world. It's a film that looks like it cost 10 times its actual budget, a testament to the crew's ability to turn limited resources into a visual masterpiece. The pacing is deliberate, it doesn't rush to give you answers, and it frequently dips into the surreal. If you need a linear A to B plot, this might leave you scratching your head, but the visual reward is worth the patience. Speaking of high-stakes professions where one mistake means everything, we move from the racing track to the cold, clinical world of international espionage. Number 3. Black Bag, 2025. Steven Soderbergh has a way of making high-level espionage look like a mundane corporate meeting, and that's exactly where the horror lies in this film. The aesthetic is sharp, digital, and frighteningly efficient. The lighting is often cold and naturalistic, making the elite spies played by Cate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender look like ghosts in their own lives. It's a film of whispers and long shots, where the architecture of the rooms tells you more about the power dynamics than the dialogue does. The production history of this project is classic Soderbergh. Known for his guerrilla-style approach even on big-budget projects, he often acted as his own cinematographer and editor under his usual pseudonyms. Filming in London and at Pinewood, the production moved with a speed that baffled the seasoned crew members. Blanchett and Fassbender, two of the most technically precise actors working today, were reportedly encouraged to find the ugly parts of their characters' marriage, leading to some intensely uncomfortable improvisations that made it into the final cut. There was a specific focus on the tools of the trade, with the production consulting with actual former intelligence officers to ensure that the black bag operations weren't Hollywood fantasies, cold, logistical nightmares. The film's wardrobe was even a point of contention, with the director insisting on high-end, luxury garments that served as armor for these characters, reflecting a world where appearance is the only thing that's real. This is a talky thriller. It's about the erosion of trust in a relationship, framed through the lens of state secrets. If you're looking for Bond-style explosions, you're in the wrong place. If the betrayal in a marriage isn't enough for you, our next entry looks at the brutal generational conflicts that can tear apart a community. Number 4. Bring Them Down, 2025. The west of Ireland hasn't looked this menacing in a long time. The film captures the damp, heavy atmosphere of the rural landscape, where the fog feels like a physical weight on the character's shoulders. Every frame is filled with the textures of the earth, the mud, the wool, the rusted gates. It's a muscular, grimy film that uses its environment to reflect the internal rot of the two warring families at its center. Making this film was a test of endurance for everyone involved. Director Christopher Andrews took the cast and crew into the harshest parts of the Irish countryside, filming through freezing rains and biting winds that were never simulated. Barry Keoghan and Christopher Abbott, both known for their intense commitment, reportedly spent time working on actual sheep farms to get the physicality of the labor right. The production was plagued by the weather, which actually worked in the film's favor, adding a layer of genuine exhaustion to the performances. There's a specific sequence involving livestock that became a point of major discussion on set. The practical effects team had to work overtime to create something that looked disturbingly real without harming any animals. The tension between the two leads wasn't just on camera. They maintained a distance on set to keep the friction between their characters palpable. It's a film that feels like it was pulled directly out of the soil, a brutal look at how the sins of the father are visited upon the son. This is an incredibly bleak film. It deals with toxic masculinity and generational trauma in a way that is often physically uncomfortable to watch. From the wide-open, lonely fields of Ireland, we move to the suffocatingly tight corridors of a Norwegian elementary school where the conflict is purely psychological. Number 5. Armand, 2025. The atmosphere in Armand is thick with the smell of floor wax and the hum of fluorescent lights. It's set entirely within the confines of a school after hours, a location that should be a place of learning but here feels like a high-stakes courtroom. The camera stays uncomfortably close to the actors, catching every twitch and every bead of sweat as two sets of parents try to navigate an accusation involving their children. It's a masterclass in the chamber piece subgenre. Halfdan Ullman Tundell, the grandson of Ingmar Bergman, clearly inherited the ability to film a room so that it feels like the walls are closing in. To find the right setting, the production team scouted over 250 schools before settling on a location that had the soul Tundell was looking for. The filming process was grueling. A climactic scene involving Renate Reinsve required her to laugh and cry for 10 hours straight to reach the necessary level of emotional exhaustion. Tundell and Reinsve have a shorthand that goes back nearly a decade, and that trust allowed them to push the character of Elizabeth into territories that felt genuinely dangerous. The production avoided traditional thriller music, instead using the ambient sounds of the building, the ticking clocks, the distant rain, the sound of shoes on linoleum, to build the tension. It was a rigorous, disciplined shoot that focused on the minutiae of human behavior, resulting in a film that is as visually precise as it is emotionally devastating. This is a slow-burn, dialogue-heavy film. It requires your full attention to the subtext of every conversation. If you struggle with subtitles, the intense physicality of the performances still carries the weight, but you'll want to be locked in. From the internal secrets of a school meeting, we pivot to a woman whose entire identity is built on a secret that is about to be violently unraveled. Number 6. The Assassin, 2025. The Greek islands usually signal a vacation, but in this series, they serve as a beautiful sun-drenched cage. The visual style contrasts the stunning azure of the Mediterranean with the harsh, cold reality of a life lived in the shadows. There's a sharp, witty edge to the writing that keeps it from falling into the usual retired killer cliches, but the tension remains high as the past literally comes knocking on the door. Production for The Assassin took the crew to the Plaka district of Athens and various secluded islands, where the heat was a constant factor. Keely Hawes and Freddie Highmore found a natural rhythm early on, which was essential given the complex, strained mother-son dynamic at the heart of the story. Hawes, who also executive produced, insisted on doing many of her own stunts, including a high-speed motorcycle chase through the narrow, winding streets of Athens that left the production team on edge. The crew had to navigate the logistical nightmare of filming in busy tourist areas while maintaining the sense of isolation needed for the story. There are stories of the production having to pause because the local cicadas were so loud they were drowning out the dialogue, a small detail that adds to the authentic, sweltering atmosphere of the piece. It's a stylish, tightly written production that manages to be both a character study and a propulsive thriller without losing its soul. This is a six-part series, not a movie, so it's a bit more of a time commitment. However, the pacing is so relentless that you'll likely find yourself hitting next episode until the sun comes up. Secrets in the sun seem to be a theme, as our next entry takes us back to a wealthy family's Greek vacation that turns into a systematic dismantling of their lives. Number 7. Malice, 2025. The Tanner family represents a certain kind of untouchable wealth, and the film's aesthetic reflects that perfectly. Minimalist villas, crisp linen, and expensive art. But as the story unfolds, that polished surface begins to crack. The lighting shifts from the bright, overexposed Greek sun to the chilly, gray privilege of London. It's a visual representation of a life being slowly poisoned from the inside out. The production of Malice was a tale of two cities. Filming began in the dead of winter in Richmond Hill, London, before moving to the island of Paros in Greece. David Duchovny and Jack Whitehall developed a fascinating antagonistic chemistry that was reportedly bolstered by their very different approaches to acting. Whitehall, playing the manipulative Manny, had to learn traditional Greek folk dancing for a key scene, a sequence that took days to film in a small, bleached white village church. The production team used a minimalist, modern villa as the main Greek location, which they had to carefully modify to ensure it looked like a home that had been lived in for generations. One of the most difficult aspects of the shoot was working with the family dog. The poisoning scenes required a level of animal coordination that was incredibly time-consuming. The director, James Wood, focused on the tentacled metaphors of the script, ensuring that even the most mundane activities, like shopping for octopus, felt like a precursor to the violence to come. The protagonist is deeply unlikable. This is a story about wealthy people suffering, and if you can't find empathy for them, you might find yourself rooting for the villain. While we're on the subject of domestic secrets, the next film explores the lethal competition that can exist between those who are supposed to love each other most. Number 8. The Better Sister, 2025. This series has a visual language that feels like a high-end fashion magazine that's been left out in the rain. The sharp bobs, the Manhattan brownstones, and the East Hampton estates all scream perfection, but the camera always seems to find the fraying edges. It's a story of two sisters who are mirrors of each other's failures, and the color palette reflects that, shifting between the cold blues of the city and the washed-out neutrals of the coast. Production was a high-profile affair, with Jessica Biel and Elizabeth Banks both serving as executive producers and leads. Filming took place across New York City and the Hamptons during a summer that was physically exhausting for the cast. There was a particular buzz on set when the production continued filming in the city just hours after high-profile real-life news broke regarding the cast's families, adding a layer of genuine, high-stakes tension to the performances. Director Craig Gillespie brought his signature eye for moral ambiguity to the project, pushing the actors to find the ugly side of sisterly love. The crew had to meticulously recreate a Manhattan law firm and a high-end magazine office, ensuring that every detail felt authentic to the world of the 1%. One of the biggest challenges was the double marriage dynamic. The actors had to film complex flashback sequences that recontextualized their current relationships, requiring a level of continuity that was a logistical puzzle for the wardrobe and makeup departments. It's an 8-episode commitment. Some critics felt it leaned a bit too hard into its book adaptation roots, but the central performances are so strong that they carry the slower moments. From the competition between sisters, we move to the lethal obsession of a mother who believes her son is being hunted by a social climber. Number 9. The Girlfriend, 2025. The deadly secret here isn't hidden in a basement. It's hidden in plain sight, behind a polite smile and a glass of expensive wine. The atmosphere is one of exquisite beauty. Aerial shots of London, mouth-watering interiors, and blindingly beautiful locations. It's the kind of world where everyone looks perfect, which makes the growing paranoia of Robin Wright's character feel even more jarring. Robin Wright didn't just star in this, she directed several episodes, bringing her sharp clinical eye to the domestic thriller genre. The production was a masterclass in exquisite music and blindingly beautiful locations, with the crew filming in some of London's most prestigious areas. The chemistry between Wright and Olivia Cooke was the engine of the shoot. They played a constant game of cat and mouse, both on and off camera, to keep their interactions sharp. There were several technical hurdles, including a drowning sequence that required intense coordination with a dive team and trauma surgeons to ensure accuracy. The production also had to deal with the logistical nightmare of filming in a working London art gallery, where the security for the actual art was as tight as the secrecy around the script. Wright's direction focused on the blindingly beautiful aspect to mask the rot underneath, creating a world that is as seductive as it is dangerous. There are some significant plot holes if you look too closely, the kind of logic gaps that are common in this genre. If you can ignore a phone that still has a charge after being under a sofa for a year, You'll have a great time. Moving from the elite circles of London to the deceptive tranquility of a small town in Michigan, we find another story about a woman who begins to suspect the man she loves isn't who he says he is. Number 10. Holland, 2025. Holland, Michigan, is presented as a slice of 1950s Americana that has somehow survived into the modern day. The tulip festivals, the windmills, and the white picket fences create a hyper-real aesthetic that feels slightly off from the start. It's a film that uses nostalgia as a weapon, making the eventual reveal of the dark underbelly feel like a violation of the viewer's own memories. Director Mimi Cave, fresh off her success with Fresh, wanted to explore the idea of the perfect suburb. The production spent weeks in the actual Holland, Michigan, filming during the Tulip Time Parade to capture the genuine atmosphere of the town. Nicole Kidman and Gael Garcia Bernal had to find a very specific tonal balance, a mix of innocence and restlessness. The production design was obsessed with the aesthetic of the past, utilizing specific vintage lenses to give the film a soft, nostalgic glow that contrasts sharply with the gritty reality of the thriller elements. There was a legendary safe-cracking sequence that required the actors to work in a cramped, practical set, heightening the sense of claustrophobia. Kidman, who views herself as a character actress first, insisted on a specific regional accent that she and Cave developed over months of rehearsal. The film's transition from a quirky comedy to a dark thriller was a point of constant discussion on set, with the crew having to pivot their lighting and camera work mid-shoot to reflect the changing tone. The film plays with perspective in a way that can be confusing. There are sequences that may or may not be happening in a character's mind, which requires a high level of viewer engagement to untangle. From a town built on tradition and secrets, we move to a methodical killer who uses the calendar itself to mark his victims. Number 11. The Calendar Killer, 2025. The atmosphere here is clinical and cold, reflecting the methodical nature of the antagonist. Much of the film takes place at night, in the lonely offices of a helpline operator, creating a sense of isolation that is almost physical. The blue light of the computer screens and the darkness of the city outside form a visual prison for the characters. This German production was a feat of ticking clock tension. Director Adolfo Colmero wanted the audience to feel the 90-minute runtime in real time. The main set, the helpline office, was built to be as functional and drab as possible to emphasize the protagonist's selfless but lonely existence. The actors, Louise Heyer and Sabin Tambria, reportedly spent hours talking to actual crisis helpline volunteers to understand the specific psychological weight of the job. One of the most challenging aspects of the production was the handwriting detail. The production had to ensure that the killer's methodical notes were consistently terrifying across multiple scenes. The filming of the abusive marriage sequences was handled with extreme care, with the crew often working in silence to allow the actors to reach the necessary emotional depths. The final act, involving a press conference, required a massive number of extras and a high level of coordination to ensure the reveal landed with the intended impact. It's a lean, efficient thriller that doesn't waste a single frame. It's a brutal watch. The film deals with domestic abuse and child loss in a very direct, unflinching way. It's not for the faint of heart. From a killer who uses the phone to haunt his victims, we end with a film that takes place entirely on a computer screen, set against the backdrop of a modern war. Number 12. Stay Online, 2025. This is a screen life thriller, meaning the entire movie happens on a laptop screen. The aesthetic is cluttered, chaotic, and frighteningly familiar. Windows opening and closing, low-res video calls, and the constant hum of a digital world. But because it's set in a conflict zone, the typical internet horror tropes are replaced by the very real terror of a life-and-death struggle. The production of Stay Online was unlike almost any other film on this list. Because of its format, the filming was often done by the actors themselves, using webcams and mobile phones to capture their performances. This required a massive amount of post-production work to ensure that the laptop interface felt authentic and responsive. The director had to coordinate performances across multiple locations, often without being in the same room as the actors, leading to a unique, fragmented energy that perfectly suits the story. The production team had to build the digital world from scratch, creating fake social media accounts, messaging apps, and news sites that felt real enough to ground the high-stakes narrative. There were stories about the editor being just as important as the director in this case, as the timing of every mouse click and notification was essential to the film's pacing. It's a masterclass in how to use a limited format to tell a story that feels massive in scale and emotional impact. If you have Zoom fatigue, this might be a tough sell. The constant screen switching can be dizzying, but if you stick with it, the tension is unparalleled. I'll keep making these as long as y'all keep watching. It's getting harder to find the good stuff, but it's still out there if you know where to look. Make Stay Online the first thing you watch tonight, It's the kind of film that reminds you why this genre still matters.